welcome to our 93rd edition of 805 Sports Talk, and we're going to get right into some Pac 8 League basketball. Elliot, you and I were at St. Joseph Tuesday night. We spent some time last week talking about a home loss for the St. Joseph boys basketball team, and we saw another home loss Tuesday night in league. The Knights were up about 20 points there in the first half, 26-9 after the first quarter. It seemed like the Knights were in control. It seemed like they were a different team after suffering that loss to AG last week, but then they did falter down the stretch, losing 68-65. It seemed kind of the turnovers again kind of crept up, really hurt them, weren't able to kind of make those plays down the stretch that win you basketball games. And I think some frustration over there from Tom Mott and the St. Joseph Knights. They have some talent. They do lose JoJo Walker. They're pretty young, but I think we expected them to be a little better than 4-2, 6 games into the Pac 8 League schedule. Things get tougher Friday as they're at SLO. I think SLO is 6-0 in the Pac 8, 17-3 overall. Moving back to Tuesday night's game, Elliot, you and I were there. What do you think happened to the Knights against Mission Prep?
They couldn't figure out the zone. And that's really was the key. Like you said, they were up 26-9 after the first quarter. With about 5.5 minutes to go in the half, they were up 20 points, 32-12. But that's when Terrence Harris, the coach of Mission Prep, switched his defense. He told me we made some adjustments. They were just killing Mission Prep. The St. Joseph was killing Mission Prep inside. They'd go to Elihu Cobb. He scored 10 points in the first quarter. Angel Ortiz got 8. Everything was in close, and they just couldn't be stopped. So they switched to a zone, and that slowed them down. St. Joe couldn't figure that zone out. They had trouble getting the ball inside. What that meant was they didn't get any easy, uncontested layups. They didn't get layups in traffic anymore. So they started shooting from the outside. So now, without baskets contested on the inside, they didn't get to the foul line. They just didn't get fouled. They took 7 foul shots in the game, made 4 of them. So I guess if they'd made those other 3, it would have been a tie game, but they didn't get enough foul shots. And then because they kept working the ball around the perimeter, looking for the 3, looking for the jump shot, looking to find a way to get inside, the excellent defense of Mission Prep got their hands on the ball. They forced turnovers. They stole the ball, and they kept creeping back ever so slowly. After they were down 20, they went on a 7-0 run. They were still down at the half. They were down by about 10 at the end of 3 quarters. But then they went on a 22-10 run in the fourth quarter to erase everything. And with a couple minutes left in the game, they finally took a lead. And at that point, St. Joe, all their shots were outside. They kept trying the 3. And they had trouble getting the rebounds. They have height. I mean, Elihu Cobb, Tavesi Au, they're tall kids, but they didn't get a whole lot inside. And so I think it was the switch to the zone, and that's what they got to do is they got to figure out the zone. If the teams realize that if you go man-to-man with them, they're going to beat you, but they can slow you down with that zone, and you haven't figured that out, then you're in trouble. And down 20 points, they still switch to a zone, and you figure that they're not going to do that when they're down by 20, but they did, and they crept back into the game, and with about 2 minutes and 55 seconds, they grabbed the lead, they lost it, grabbed it back, and then they actually got the ball and had more shots at the basket in those last 3 minutes than Righetti did. Than St. Joseph did. So, Tom Mott was unhappy. When Harris switched up to defense, St. Joe just couldn't solve it.
Yeah, and I think some credit is deserved, obviously, at Mission Prep. I think the Pac 8 League as a whole is a lot better than what we've seen in recent years. It's pretty much been the Mission Prep St. Joseph show the last 3 or 4 years, and looking at how SLO's kind of risen up this year is pretty impressive. And AG's right there with all the top teams in the league. They took SLO to overtime, so I think this league is a lot better this year. And St. Joseph is very young, and kind of a way to fix that is just playing and learning on the fly. It's going to take some time. I think they're going to be a lot better at the end of the season than they are right now, especially with the young guy like Angel Ortiz, a freshman, just coming into the fold. He's new. Tavesi Au is new to the St. Joseph program as well. Elihu Cobb is probably their most experienced player kind of the most consistent player. Mike Ramirez definitely provides a lot for them as well. Matt Chavez is young, and they got some young players over there. Kenoa Kioma's young as well. So I think they're going to develop and be a lot better than they are right now after, 10 or so more Pac-8 League games. Get into the playoffs, and I think they're going to look a lot differently than they do right now.
They should make it to the playoffs. There is a separation from the top 4 teams to the bottom, although they're all good teams. It's a strong league, but I think the top 4 teams are pretty well established at this point in the season. But you're right, they need a little more seasoning. One of the things they didn't play tough defense on this kid, Bryce Hilton. He hit 3 wide open 3-pointers in the fourth quarter that just cut that lead right down, and actually when they took the lead, it was on one of his threes. So they got to play a little better defense. They got to figure out what to do against the zone, because not everybody's going to play them man-to-man, and other teams are watching these things and saying, "Oh, look what Mission Prep did. Maybe that's what we need to do to slow them down." But when they were running and gunning in the first quarter and a half, they were unstoppable. They got to get back to that. They got to figure out how to do that in the face of a zone. But there are ways to beat a zone, but they just couldn't get it into the big guys. There were hands everywhere. Cobb and Au were just double teamed anytime they got the ball, or they tried to get the ball into them. There were Mission Prep players all over the place. Well, that left St. Joe Knights open for the 3. They'd work it back out and didn't hit their 3s. So they're going to have to work on that too.
Yeah, but they obviously did show a lot of promise there. A 20-point lead in the first half, and that kind of makes it a little more frustrating when you see how well they can play at times, and then they just falter down the stretch. Moving over to the LPL and girls basketball, a team who's been pretty consistent, even though they've had to battle through some adversity, is Cabrillo. We weren't sure if they would be tested Tuesday night at home against Templeton. Templeton's played well, looking like they're the second best team in that league behind Cabrillo, but the Conqs pretty much just took care of business Tuesday night. What did you see from Cabrillo?
You know what? We talked about coaching adjustments on the fly. Jared McCune is another one who's really good about making adjustments, because Templeton actually had a 6-1 lead, and Cabrillo had a hard time making their 3-point shots. So McCune encourages girls to go inside more, and Alyssa Stewart came alive. Defensively, they went with a full-court press that also just swallowed Templeton whole. So Jared McCune's also one of those guys, especially on the girls' basketball end, who knows how to make adjustments on the fly. But here's the kicker, though, that came away from this game. Cabrillo has already lost Brittany McCune, as we know. They also lost Kiki Dial, perhaps, for the season in last night's game. Dial's not really much of a scorer, but she is a valuable defensive presence for Cabrillo. And I asked this question to McCune. It's like, with all these injuries mounting up, is there that cause of concern, maybe even going to the JV ranks to fill your roster? And he was kind of mum about it, but he was pretty vocal in saying, you know what? Even though injuries are part of the game of basketball, you hate to see this during this time of year when they're making that LPL push.
And Cabrillo's 13-2 on the season. I think their losses are to Righetti and Clovis, 5-0 in the LPL. Do you think they're going to be okay with these injuries? Do you think that it is going to be a huge setback? I think we can pretty much lock it in that they're going to win the LPL, probably undefeated, even though they are down those 2 players. What do you think the future looks like?
They'll be okay the rest of the way as long as Aaron Jenkins is still healthy. And Aaron Jenkins took a beating last night. I saw her hit the floor plenty of times, and I actually felt bad for Aaron, because I was thinking, you know what, she might be the next to go down. Hopefully not if you're Cabrillo, but to me, Cabrillo is still in a good position to where they could still win the league outright. I mean, They beat Lompoc pretty handily. I know they got Nepoma coming up, but they also beat Templeton pretty handily last night. I think if you're Cabrillo, the biggest concern is, do you have enough depth and do you have enough strength to make a deep playoff run? Because that was the one thing they kept talking about, that this year they don't want to settle for going to the second round and losing. They want to take that next step. They want to clinch state. But now with the injuries mounting up, I mean, that really leaves a lot of question and doubt.
All right.
They seem to be able to overcome the adversity at this level. I see that they should be able to win the Los Padres League, and McCune will have enough time. There's enough games left to get whoever has to replace Kiki Dial or Brittany McCune the experience they need to help win games in the LPL. My concern for them is when they get to the playoffs. will they be able to overcome it? Because there are no dogs in the playoffs. Maybe that first round game you'll get a low seed and you should be able to beat that team. But after that, there are no dogs left in that hunt. They're all good teams, quality teams, and now you lose two key players. Like you say, Kiki Dial is not a high scorer, but she's, you see teams win championships. You don't need 5 scoring players. You need somebody, a Dennis Rodman type under the basket that'll get you the rebounds. And they never had any offensive plays for Rodman because it was either a putback or get the ball to somebody else. But he got them the ball, and that's the kind of player Kiki is. And you need that kind of kid on the court. So that's when I think it's going to hurt them the most, is in the postseason.
I think when you look at the playoffs, you're probably going to always see that one team that's just happy about being in the postseason. And Cabrillo's not that team. I mean, they're used to the playoffs. But I'm looking at the third round, like the quarterfinals, the semifinals. Do they have enough? Will they be healthy during that time? That's the biggest question I have for Cabrillo now.
Yeah, and injuries is probably one of the most frustrating things in high school sports, that from our end at least, because we want to see how good these teams can do in the playoffs at full strength. We saw it last year with Righetti losing Danita Astorga in the playoffs. If they have her, maybe they make a deeper playoff run, and now we're kind of seeing it with Cabrillo losing Brittany McCune, possibly Kiki Dial, and they have such limited time with 4 years in high school, maybe 2 years on varsity to make an impact. To lose a season is just tough for these kids, and we don't like to see that. So maybe Cabrillo can still make a run. We're fighting through these injuries, but it's going to be an uphill battle for them for sure. Moving up to Thursday's games, Napomo and Lompoc. Lorenzo, that's where you're going to be Thursday night. Napomo's kind of a surprise. Lompoc, we weren't sure where they were going to be at. They've always been really good, but losing players like Cheyenne Marmolejo is not easy. They've done okay. They did take a league loss to Templeton. They take on Napomo, which has played really well. Got to mention Chantil Simonson Tuesday night. Napomo had their Hoops for Hope fundraising game for cancer survivors, and Chantil Simonson's a cancer survivor herself. Had a career game, pretty much 20 points, 7 steals, and Napomo had an OT win over Santa Maria, 47-44. So that was really cool. Now Napomo's got to take on Lompoc at Paisola Pavilion Thursday night. Do you think that's going to be a big matchup? Is it a pivotal matchup? Do you think Lompoc's going to take care of business? What do you take away from that one?
Well, in regards to Lompoc, I mean, Claudia Terrones is another one who really knows how to prepare a team. And yeah, there's a lot more youth on this Lompoc roster compared to last year, but they're 3-2 in league games, and they just beat San Ynez pretty handily. And Danielle Morgan, who's been there for 4 years, she just had her 1,000th career point. So seeing her and then seeing Chantel go at it on the basketball court is going to be a sight to see. I also want to add Maya Mendoza has helped giving some spark to that Lompoc high offense. So, I mean, yeah, I had my questions about Lompoc, whether or not they'll be as good or even better than last year. It's clear to me last year's team was better, but that's not discounting the job that Claudia Terrones has done. I mean, she knows how to prepare her team. She knows how to keep her team focused.
Now, kind of on the same page as Righetti, we weren't sure what to expect out of them this year, losing some key pieces from that squad that made the semifinals last year and just dominated Pac-8 League play, going 14-0. But Righetti's might even be better this year. They're 15-1, 6-0 in the Pac-8 League, and they're averaging nearly 80 points in league play. Girls basketball, you don't see a lot of high-scoring teams, but Righetti can just score the basketball like a team I haven't ever seen before. Maybe those St. Joseph teams back in the early 2010s, 2011, when they had Ali Beebe, Tatiana Dunlap, those kind of squads were really good at scoring the basketball. But this Righetti team is kind of unique with 79 points, scored 88 points against St. Joseph last week. Just a great team. I think they're beating their opponents by about 22 points per game. Elliot, we've all seen Righetti play this year. Elliot, you've seen them. How rare is an offense like that in girls basketball? Have you seen something quite like that?
Not on the high school level. No, they're just, they lost some players from last year, and you're wondering, what's going to happen to this team, and they're just picked up where they left off and seem to be better. You were talking about the St. Joe teams. They didn't score 80 points. They won their games, and they won big, but not 80s. They were 60s to 40. They had great defense. Brianna Bagnuta, Kelsey English were on those teams. They were great. They won the 2011 state championship, a couple CIF Southern Section titles, and I kind of compare them favorably to this Righetti team here. I come away every game that they play more and more impressed with how well they're doing. You know, their coach was a spark plug point guard for that team, and she's, you know, they got them playing like that. They're all playing with her kind of grit and determination, and I'm really liking them. I think they can keep it up, and I don't think there's anybody going to compete with them in the Pac-8. And there are some really good teams in the Pac-8, but I don't want the season to end too soon, but I'm really excited to see what they can do in the playoffs. They might go deep. They could win a Southern Section title.
Yeah, and Righetti's only loss is to Cabrillo. They did, you know, later avenge that loss, even though Brittany McCune was out of that game. What do you think of Righetti this year? Have you seen an offense quite like they have, and do you see them making it past the semifinals? They lost in the semifinals of the last 2 years. Do you think they can make it past that point?
This is the most complete team, honestly, on the girls' basketball end. I mean, if you were to do rankings, I would put Righetti at number 1 easily. And it's much more than just saying Sheckard, who scores all the points. I mean, you mentioned Dennis Rodman type. Well, Ashley Reynoso is that factor. I mean, I've seen games where she hauls down like 15 or 24 rebounds. So she's a very valuable presence. And, you know, truthfully, I think that element was missing last year when Righetti lost Anita Astorga. But as long as these girls stay healthy, I could definitely see not only a CIF run, but maybe even beyond that.
Yeah, they've scored 70 points, and at least 70 points 9 times already this year. Against Mission Prep last week, we thought that was going to be a close game, but Righetti just ran away with it. Some of that ball movement was something like I haven't seen on the girls' basketball stage. The off-ball movement, they got it all, and they got a player like Ashley Reynoso who does add that defensive and rebounding element. Kendall Bagby's a post presence as well. A young player like Mercedes Arredondo, she's really stepped up. Malia Cabagan is a younger player who provides a lot of size, so they have some speed, size, shooting. They've got it all, and I think it's got to be championship game or bust for the Warriors this year. We talk about Desiree Hitch and the job she's done over there at Righetti a whole lot, but I still feel like we haven't done it quite justice. Just the amazing turnaround that she's done, and it keeps improving every year. This is year 3, and they seem to be even better this year. I think maybe one area that they could kind of focus on is turnovers. I think they're averaging around 16 turnovers a game. They sometimes get 20 assists. You want to have, you know, maybe double your turnover to assist ratio somewhere in there. Maybe it's kind of, you know, cut back on this turnovers a little bit, but, you know, they're pretty much the best team that we've seen in a while here. Zane Checkers averaging about 16 points per game. I think she scored 28 last week and then 22 on Tuesday night, so 50 points in her last 2 games. So they've got it all. And we're going to move over to the NFL playoffs, which everybody was kind of talking about over the weekend. A lot of fun. Some people were happy to see their teams move on. Some people thought their team was going to move on, and then they lost in the last second, obviously, over in Minnesota. That's what most people were talking about. And, you know, the last second play to win a game, Marcus Williams, the safety for the Saints, missed that tackle on Stephon Diggs, and, you know, the rest is history.
He's a meme now. he's everywhere you go, there's a meme of him, whether if it's a Matador next to him or maybe even like a Stone Cold Stunner as well, so...
Yeah, he's a California kid as well. He played his college football at Utah. So we don't like to see, you know, Southern California kids or, you know, LA kids go on the big stage and kind of get some notoriety. But I think Marcus Williams really handled it well after missing that tackle. You know, answered all the questions with the media, a really nice social media post thanking all the supporters and, you know, kind of saying he'll be back. So I think it was handled pretty well. Elliot, what did you take away from how the Saints lost that game and just a last-second play like that and pretty much pandemonium over there in Minnesota?
Well, he whiffed. The poor kid whiffed. I don't understand it. He was out of position, and was it Stephon Diggs? As soon as he got that ball, he was gone. Williams was like stumbling, and Diggs was behind him, and it's like, what just happened? I mean, it's the first walk-off touchdown in regulation. You know, the Patriots won in overtime last year, but this was the regulation. It ended the game. It was just crazy, and you were thinking, wow, the Saints just completed a remarkable comeback. I mean, weren't they down to 17-0? They came back. They took the lead on a field goal. All they had to do was the 10 seconds left on the clock. Just pressure the quarterback. You know he's throwing it. Play your prevent defense and keep everybody in front of you, and they didn't. So, you know, that's going to go right up there with like Franco Harris's immaculate reception. I mean, it was just stunning to see that. And you know, I didn't have a dog in that hunt because I'm rooting for a different team to win it. But you kind of like Drew Brees, and he was, you know, a Charger when he started his career, and you're thinking, wow, old guy's got a great comeback. But then Case Keenum, the quarterback from Minnesota, is one of these sort of Drew Brees, you know, type of guys that he's 6 feet tall. They say he's 6'1". He's short for a quarterback. He didn't get drafted. He scrapped and fought his way to get into a lineup, and only got there because the top 2 quarterbacks went down with injury, and now he's proven himself. So it's one of those Cinderella stories. And if they win one more game, they get to host the Super Bowl in their own home stadium, and it's indoors in the cold, so the outdoor temperatures won't matter. It's like the Patriots had to beat or have to beat another team in the cold. More warm weather teams coming up to New England to play. That cold weather advantage would be gone in the Super Bowl because it's in a dome stadium. So. And you look at the Eagles, it's like they won with a touchdown, a missed extra point, and 3 field goals. Bortles is like your old Fresno State quarterback that became the ESPN announcer. Trent Dilfer. He's a Super Bowl winning quarterback, but on one of these teams that would win games 15-10. I don't know that going against the Vikings they're going to be able to win 15-10. So I'm looking for the Vikings to host the Super Bowl.
Joe, bear with me. The quarterbacks in the NFC Championship game happen to be former Rams. Sorry about that. But, you know, Case Keenum to me is the better story because, I mean, the guy's just been with, 4 teams and he wasn't even drafted.
No.
And, I mean, the guy is just one game away from getting the Vikings to the Super Bowl, and he's backed up by the league's best defense. Well, like the old adage says, defense wins championships. So, I mean, Philadelphia has had a pretty solid defense, but Minnesota plays better. So, hence why I feel like even though Minnesota's the dome team, I got the Vikings winning that game. Now, as far as the AFC Championship game is concerned, I don't want to look past the Patriots or underestimate the Patriots. I've done that before, and we've seen what happens. But I don't want to look past Jacksonville either, so it's too much of a it's very conflicting for me. I mean, right now I would give the edge Tom Brady over Blake Bortles. I mean, Brady's been doing this for a while. But I feel like, honestly, you mentioned the cold weather elements. We have to throw that out in this AFC Championship game because here's the thing to keep in mind. Jacksonville won at Pittsburgh when it was not even 20 degrees.
Right.
And they have a system where, realistically, when you think about it, it's built for cold weather. It's run here, run there with Leonard Fournette, play great defense. I mean, it's a staple of Doug Marrone, and Doug Marrone's an East Coast guy.
And they scored 45 points on Pittsburgh. Mm-hmm. So, you know, the Patriots only gave up 14 to Tennessee. So I think the key to that game, although you can never say this for sure, it would be if the Patriots can get off to a hot start and force them to play, Jacksonville to play catch-up. But we saw Jacksonville hung tough with the Steelers, and we saw the Vikings lose the lead, and play catch-up on a miraculous play. So anything can happen.
One of the reasons why I give the edge to the Patriots is that I noticed when Pittsburgh made that comeback, they started going with more quick outs, more quick passes. When you go against a very cat-quick and very aggressive defensive line like Jacksonville's, one of the ultimate ways to counter that is with a short screen or just like a simple 5-yard out, whatever. New England has that advantage with Brady. I mean, Brady's very surgical when it comes to those quick passes, and he has the tight ends to help make that offense go. So, hence why I go with New England.
And the slot receivers, too. Mm-hmm. They're really good at hitting a guy 5 yards just downfield. You don't have to get a touchdown on every play. You just got to get positive yardage, and if you can get 10 yards in 3 plays, then you keep the ball moving, and they're good at that, and they've got some good running backs. You know, their running backs are finally started to produce pickup yardage.
One more thing I'll add before we go. Even if Minnesota wins and they actually host the Super Bowl, here's the thing to keep in mind. Atlanta was the designated home team in last year's Super Bowl. In this Super Bowl, the NFC is technically the designated visiting team. So, I mean, Minnesota might be in the white uniforms in their own home stadium, unless they could petition Goodell.
Well, it'll be fun. It'll be a fun weekend of football, I'm sure. And you did a great job breaking down. Both you guys did a good job breaking down those matchups. I think the AFC Championship game could be a lot of fun, even though a lot of you guys are writing that one off. I think both games could be a lot of fun, and it should be a good Super Bowl in a couple weeks here.
I don't breathe until the games are over. Of course, I'm from Boston, and although Foxborough is technically way closer to Providence, Rhode Island than it is downtown Boston, but nevertheless, I'm rooting for the Patriots. As a journalist, I want a good game, but as a fan, I'd like to see the Brady and those guys get one more Super Bowl before they all retire. And one of the things about that Minnesota miracle, everybody's talking about that. So everybody's gotten off the thing about, oh, Brady and Belichick and Robert Kraft are all at war with each other. That's crazy. That's somebody that needed something to write about. So maybe there's discontent. Mm-hmm. Nah, these guys are all on the same page. When it comes down to it, the bottom line is, let's go out and win a Super Bowl. Let's win this game and the next game and the next game, and then make it into the Super Bowl and then win that game. And the rest of it is just white noise as far as they're concerned. But at least this week everybody's talking about Minnesota and Philadelphia, and they're off of the Patriots discontent bandwagon.
I'll add two more things. I was at the gym and I saw a guy wearing a Jaguars hat. I haven't seen that since the Mark Brunell days. And not only that, NFC Championship game, you have two guys you're probably familiar with, Michael Kendricks and Eric Kendricks from Fresno. So Fresno's going to be cool.
I think in Fresno. So yeah, cool. Thank you guys for tuning in to 805 Sports Talk. We'll see you next week.